Entrepreneurship in nursing is our episode topic. My guest is Audrey McCollough, a pediatric critical care nurse by background, founder of PivotPath, a business that supports the advancement of nursing beyond the bedside, and host of a podcast channel titled Nursing Beyond the Bedside. So let's get started.
Welcome to the BRG Nurse Executive Podcast. BRG is a global consulting firm that helps organizations in disputes and investigations, corporate finance, and performance improvement and advisory. BRG's healthcare performance improvement practice offers multidisciplinary services to healthcare organizations. We focus on implementation with innovative, independent, and data-driven solutions. In the BRG Nurse Executive Podcast, we discuss improving patient care by advancing nursing leadership. For more information about BRG, please visit thinkbrg.com. Now here's your host, Nick Chmielewski.
Audrey, thank you so much for joining us today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm excited to be here.
Now, before we get into our episode topic today, can you share a little bit about yourself with our listeners and your journey to PivotPath?
So I was a pediatric critical care nurse for 8 years. I traveled for the last half of that. And like many critical care nurses, I eventually had set myself down the path to become a CRNA. It's just what I thought you did. You're a critical care nurse. If you want to level up in your career, you go back to school to become a CRNA. And I was set on that path for a while until the summer before school started. I thought that I would try to get a remote role and go live out of the RV for the summer with my husband before I had to buckle down and be a student for the next few years. It was that experience that really changed everything for me. I took a job in health tech. My first role was a bit of a recruiter type position, and I got a taste for work that was not attached to a physical location. And I also got a taste for the growth potential for myself in the health tech world. Before that, I didn't really understand how my nursing experience and nursing skills could translate and take me anywhere outside of nursing. But I ended up fully pivoting down this health tech path. I held roles in recruiting and customer success and eventually growth and content marketing. And through that experience, I was sharing my story with other nurses about how I was discovering that thanks to my nursing experience, I developed all of these really essential soft skills that would serve me down any number of career paths that I took. And I found that my story was really resonating with nurses. And nurses, once they understood that they could do more than nursing, they were very eager to hear how. I don't have to go back to school to do these other things. What do you mean? I already have the skills to go take on some of these roles. And out of that experience, I founded PivotPath, which PivotPath exists really just to empower nurses in their career and make them understand their full value as a professional, whether that is at the bedside or away from it. My biggest thing is just to make sure that nurses don't feel stuck and limited and they recognize their own value. So a lot of what I do through PivotPath is introducing nurses to other opportunities, whether that is like remote nursing roles or beyond. So things like customer success, marketing, sales, clinical consultants, and then really helping them to upskill themselves and learn how to communicate their experience in a new way that adequately communicates their value as like into these new roles and really makes their soft skills shine.
So there's two paths I want to go down with our conversation for our listeners. We're going to cover probably the one that a lot of our nurse executives want to hear later on in our podcast, which is the wait a second, don't take away my nurses. Tell me how I can keep them. But I want to talk more a little bit about how you built your business. How did you know where to start? I want to start this journey. I want to start offering these services. How do I form my business entity? How do I set up my accounting? How do I understand what my business model is going to be? Walk me through that. How did you do that from I'm working for someone else doing these non-bedside entity work to I'm going to hang out my own shingle, so to speak, and provide services?
To be honest, it was a lot of flying by the seat of my pants. I was consuming a lot of information. So whether that was podcasts or just like Googling information on how to do this on the internet, I read a lot of Russell Brunson's books on how to drive traffic, develop a funnel, and really engage with an audience. So it was difficult, I would say, because as nurses, we don't have a business class in school. We don't have a foundation for how to do this. But nurses are very resourceful and they're very quick learners. And so it was those skills that helped me just figure out. And honestly, it was day by day. And it took a lot of experimentation and trial and error. But it was really just having that growth mindset of, okay, this is something I'm really passionate about. And really just following that passion of like, how do I give the nurses the value and like the education that they're needing? And how do I build a business around that? And so it was honestly just a lot of information consumption in all forms.
So no formal education.
No, I have just figured it out day by day. I will say my
Steve Jobs
husband,
had no formal education. Elon Musk never really did. So
yeah, you just have to have a growth mindset and a thirst for knowledge and just like the drive to solve a problem that you see happening and that you feel like you have the answers to. And I think that especially getting started, and not to say that I don't still deal with this some, but it's at first, it's how am I the person to give nurses this information? And it is as simple as I'm a few steps ahead of them down the path that they're trying to go. And so
mentorship.
I can yes, and so I can start by sharing what I've learned through my own journey and, like, what I've learned by consuming information along the way, and that's really all that it takes to get started, and from there, you just continue to build momentum.
What's going right now at PivotPath?
My my market size and the top of my funnel is endless. There are which, like, I know that
Which is
your
probably
audience is
also
very
your struggle, which is the next question.
yes. Yeah, there are so many nurses that are burnt out and feeling stuck and are just so hungry to learn what else they can do with their career, how else they can make an impact. So honestly, there's an endless appetite out there for what it is that I'm talking about.
All right, so let's pretend for a moment that I'm a CNO or a director in a hospital, and I'm hearing you talk about this, and I'm going, "Oh my goodness, this is not helping my problem. I cannot retain my nursing workforce. They're going to competitors or they're leaving the bedside outright because they themselves are burnt out. Getting burnt out because I have this revolving door that I can't stop the bleeding, so to speak. What's the first thing that you do for hemorrhagic shock? You stop the bleeding, right? And
Right.
I can't stop the bleeding from happening. So I guess my question would be if you were called upon by a chief nurse to help them with their retention issues, what are some strategies that you would employ to address the nursing workforce's challenges of being burnout and potentially find ways where we can continue to keep nurses at the bedside? Because at the end of the day, somebody's got to be in the hospital taking care of patients.
Yes, they do. And right now, nurses at the bedside, they don't feel like they have a voice. They don't feel like they're being heard. They don't feel like they can make an impact. And they don't feel like they're valued by administration or by their patients. And so I think that what healthcare administrators can do and managers is really put nurses in a position where they can make an impact. Like nurses are so fatigued from being asked like, what problems are you seeing? How can we make things better? And like providing an answer to that and then never seeing any change. So if there's a way that you can create a program around allowing nurses to create that change, use their voices and create change within their facility, I think that would work wonders. Like they are the ones that are boots on the ground. They are the operators. They are making everything happen through every shift throughout the day. So, first of all, I think a little bit of recognition goes a long way. And I think that allowing them to not only bring their problems that they're experiencing to you, let them play an active role in solving those problems and creating new solutions and innovations.
What percentage roughly of the people that you're working with, your clients, are leaving the bedside as a direct action or impact from, I feel like I'm not adding value in the work that I'm doing?
I don't wanna say 100% because it's not 100%, but there are so many nurses. They're a passionate people. If you're thinking about the individuals who make the choice to become a nurse, they have a passion to help. They have a passion to create impact. That is like a core part of who they are. So to be put into a role where they end up feeling like that's almost taken advantage of is going to lead to burnout. They want to be able to create change. And even when they come to me and they want to talk to me about other jobs and other career possibilities, they still have that desire. Even in the depths of their burnout, they still have this desire to create an impact. They're not coming to me wanting to go to an empty desk job where they feel nothing about the work that they're doing. They want to follow that passion. They want to make an impact. So I think that it's really important for leadership to recognize that's your workforce, and that can be a really powerful thing. There are a lot of people in the United States and the world that apathetically come to work every day and just get the tasks done that they need to get done and nothing else. And broadly speaking, that's not nurses. Nurses are coming to work because they're passionate about what they're doing and they want to do more, they want to create change. So that is something to really tap into because it can be really powerful.
What percentage of the people that you're working with are jumping ship and leaving the bedside outright to pursue something else versus those that are trying to continue to stay at the bedside in some capacity, but also have something else on the side?
I would say the majority of them are jumping ship completely.
Okay. Where are they going?
So it's a bit of a mix. Nurses often, when they think about leaving the bedside, they are thinking of remote nursing roles. So things like remote patient monitoring, telehealth, things like that. What I educate them about through PivotPath is there's actually much more that they can do and that they're qualified to do. So their health tech is booming right now. There are a lot of startups out there that have identified a problem in the healthcare space and they think that they have the technology, the team to solve it. And that is a fantastic way for nurses to pivot, stay connected to healthcare and really still be able to make an impact. If they can find a company where they are mission aligned and that company is working to solve a problem that they've experienced, they've worked with, they're like intimately familiar with, that's a great place for a nurse to check all those boxes of, hey, I'm making more money, I've got better work-life balance, my schedule is more flexible, and I'm still connected to healthcare and I still feel like I'm able to make an impact, though that impact is different from the, of course, hands-on care that a nurse is doing at the bedside.
Do you see any clients starting to do that work and then they've gotten that value and they're bringing that value back into the bedside? Or are we seeing a one way door versus a revolving door when it comes to once I'm out, I'm staying away because I've found something else?
I find that a lot of nurses stay away. And
Okay.
I think that there's a few reasons for that. One is these companies, let's use a health tech startup as a good example. If the nurse is using that to pivot into a new role, they're entering into a role where they have a lot of growth opportunity. And that those career paths are wide and varied. Like they can go into sales, customer success, operations. Like nurses have all of the skill sets that they need for those roles. So they take on that first position and they say, "Oh wow, that performance review cycle, I got a $10,000 raise. That's never happened at the bedside." And then I'm looking ahead and, oh, there's this position over here on the operations team. That seems like something I'm interested in. Let me go check that out. Whereas at the bedside, your career ladder is it feels shorter. It feels like there's a ladder to climb, but it only goes so high. And it doesn't come with the financial perks and the work life balance that a lot of these other roles do. I think that those are some of the reasons that once nurses get a taste of what a non clinical work life balance is, it's hard for them to go back and say, yeah, okay, there's this bedside position. I'm actually a good example of this. This past spring, before I left my job full time to really focus on PivotPath, I thought, let me see if I can get a nursing job again. Work for 3 days a week. I'll have 4 days to build my own business. I'll have benefits, pay, etc. I got a job offer, but that job offer did not come with a guarantee that I would not have to work any night shifts. And night shift is something I did for a very long time. I can't. I just cannot make myself work another night shift. And that was a deal breaker for me. I would have gone back to the bedside at least temporarily, but I couldn't do it. So I think that there are some barriers like that that just like you don't have the same flexibility with those clinical roles. And so it keeps people away.
So we've talked about involvement in the decisions of the work that you're doing, listening to our frontline staff. We've talked about the importance of flexibility in schedules as potential reasons or ability to mitigate the exodus that's happening in nursing. But everything that you've described to me is, oh my gosh, how do I keep people on my working force? I'm really concerned. And frankly, in the work that, I do as a consultant, you can see the brain drain that has occurred at the bedside over the last few years since COVID. Other than involvement, what advice or pearls of wisdom would you have for our frontline leaders and our nurse executives as a mechanism to try to retain as long as possible?
I think try to really understand some of the things that I just said about what are the perks of someone working in a role outside of the clinical sphere and what elements of that can you pull into that clinical work environment? Can you honor scheduling preferences more? Scheduling preferences, it seems simple, but if you think about it for a nurse, a schedule determines like when they sleep, what holidays they get to attend. Like it's a big piece of that work life balance. So I would say that is a great place to start. Some of the other things, I'm going to put these out there and like I realize that they are not so simple, but paying nurses more or having a more enticing career ladder to where they can really boost their income more than a couple bucks an hour every year. And then back to that, just providing them opportunities to like truly make an impact in a meaningful way. And I don't mean join a committee because that's the next step on the career ladder where they're going to put in the work to analyze the readmission rate on the unit, and then create a solution and then never see that solution implemented. Give them the power and the runway to actually create that change. And I do think that is so powerful.
Can you talk a little bit about your podcast channel?
My podcast is called Nursing Beyond the Bedside, and I bring on guests that are nurses who have done something non-traditional with their career. This doesn't mean that all of them have left the bedside to do something non-clinical. There are nurses who have pivoted into like clinical research, for example, and they're doing like decentralized clinical research nursing. There are nurses who have gone on to start their own businesses, who have pivoted into health tech. And really, my goal is to show nurses that it's possible. And beyond that, it's possible, there are a lot of possibilities out there. And what's so inspiring, I think, about all of the guests that come on is there's this common thread of a nurse just following their passion. And maybe that spark is burnout at the bedside, but they don't lose that passion and that desire to make an impact. And it's like you can watch them sniff out that passion and chase down how they can provide a solution. And so it's really exciting to share their stories and let other nurses see that it's not just one nurse or two nurse or a few nurses with like special circumstances that are doing this. So many nurses are doing this and they're being successful. Like they're able to chase their passion and create an impact in a new way.
Any closing thoughts as we wrap up this episode?
For both nurses and leaders, not to sleep on the value and the potential of a nurse. Nurses, I think that we can often be taken for granted because we're coming in, we're doing all of this tasky work throughout the day, but realize that the soft skills that we have that are powering us to get through those shifts are really incredible. We can prioritize, we can manage shifting and competing priorities, we can de escalate situations, we can communicate complex things. We work great as part of a team, we're resourceful, we're adaptable. I can go on and on. So I think that recognizing that as a nurse is important, but also for nurse leaders to recognize that they have a very powerful, capable workforce. And I think tapping into the power of that can be great.
Entrepreneurship in nursing has been our episode topic, but really today we spent some time talking about recognizing the value of our current nursing workforce as a retention strategy. Audrey, thank you so much. Appreciate your time today. For more information, please check out her podcast, which is titled Nursing Beyond the Bedside. Thanks, Audrey.
Thank you.
You've been listening to the BRG Nurse Executive Podcast, which focuses on improving patient care by advancing nursing leadership. The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the host and podcast guest and do not necessarily reflect the opinions, position, or policy of the guest employer, Berkeley Research Group, or their other respective employees and affiliates.